Hey everybody, and welcome back to another Inside the Music. Today we'll be looking at Faces, which is the fourth track on Anchored. It's another one of the instrumental interludes, similar to the Overture and Love and Be Merciful. And I wanted to kind of just dive into the reasons why I even included this track, sort of its origins. So if you haven't listened to the full track already, go give that a listen. It's in the description below. So let's just kick it off from the beginning.
Listen. There are 10,000 times 10,000 roads down which we may travel. It makes no difference which, but at the end of those roads, we are going to meet one or the other of two faces. We are either going to meet the beatific face of Christ, or we are going to meet the miserific face of Satan.
So, pretty existential. It's a little intense, but the idea being that there's right and there's wrong, and the choices we make can kind of put us on a good path or not so good path, right? That's the ultimate message. No matter what you believe, that's the message. The purpose of this transitional track is to emphasize that turning point of like, okay, you got a few pathways ahead of you. Some of them are good, some of them are not so good. I kept the overarching orchestration relatively woodwind free, except for one spot, right? So we have this gigantic swell, and it's strings and horns, trombones, tuba, pretty much just like some meaty brass right in the center to kind of create that warm, yet full tone. And there's kind of like this chromatic line happening in the viola, like this dee-dum, da-dum, just kind of this slightly eerie sound, I guess, while the rest of the strings are doing this big melody in octaves. So either way, mixing that with then the horns, it just creates a sense of almost being on the precipice of something very important, right? That was kind of the idea, musically speaking. And of course, the gigantic timpani swell, I'll play that again for you. I'll mute the voice. I mean, my goal with this was to almost have a sense of like, you've got to make a decision, man. Like, you have to make a decision. That was the idea with that. That's why it's not all minor all the time. There's that chord change. Right? That one harmonic change is like, okay, wait, there's a little bit of hope in there, right? And even more importantly, later on, we have this kind of decrescendo and then just clarinets and flutes. Literally, that's all it is. If you wanted to geek out about the sheet music with me, it's a pretty intimate sound with just the flute and the clarinets. Right, and the idea with this was like, and forgive me here, but if you can picture God kind of saying like, Tony, I don't want to lose you, man. I don't want to lose you to these decisions. Come home, come back. I wanted that, almost that gentle, intimate whisper of like, don't go down that path. Whatever you do, don't go down that path. If you've listened to this album, maybe you picked up on this, maybe not. But the melody that happens in the strings, I'll solo the strings. So that dee-da-da-dum, I don't know if you picked up on it, but at the very, very end of the subsequent track, Satan's Game, I'll play a little bit of this for you. What have I become? What have I become? Internal dialogue of like, what am I doing? Where have I been going? But the melody, it's linked. It's almost like Faces in Satan's Game are kind of their own, I suppose, like Faces acts as a prelude to Satan's Game. And I'll dissect that song in a subsequent video. I've gotten a couple questions actually, like how did you make the strings sound the way they did? You know, just to geek out a little bit, I think a lot of times when you're dealing with virtual orchestra like this, or even just mixing orchestra in general like this, I find that it's two regions. There's almost like this high sizzly stuff, you know, again, not to geek out here too much for those of you, but maybe you're curious, is like the 2,500 hertz range, the 4,000 hertz range, especially in the higher violins, that stuff can be kind of grating. And so I find with these, especially in string libraries or even mixing, you know, real, I suppose, a live orchestra or a hybrid of the two, you can see that this is almost always cut down, as well as the lows, right? Because this is where the violins are a little bit resonant. Anyway, I could break this down in terms of the mixing, and if you're interested in that kind of thing, let me know. I'll play the violins and I'll mute that lovely equalizer. It's that stuff. It's just a little bit grating if you don't tame it. So anyway, those are sort of the approaches I want to think big, lush, you know, huge sounding. And of course we have the brass for kind of like that weight, that heaviness. So I'm going to solo this spot here where the trombones come in as well. So really there's Faces. That is the track. It's sort of acting as a bridge from like the breakdown to then the lowest point before we then kind of come back out into the more redemptive side of the album. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you enjoyed the music and a bit of insight into the orchestration. And if there's a song from Anchored that I haven't covered yet, I'll get to all of them. But if there's one you're like really eager to get to, let me know in the comments. Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to tackle that for you and, you know, break it down for you. So anyway, thanks again for being here. I really appreciate it. And stay tuned for the next one. Take care.